Okay, Chapter 22, How to Use ASP.NET Ajax. What we talk about in this chapter is how to use the ASP.NET Ajax server controls to develop Ajax applications. So we'll talk about what Ajax is, how it works. We'll briefly describe some of its inner workings, the XML HTTP request object. Talk a little bit about the client-side framework that the ASP.NET Ajax gives us and the basic controls that we get with ASP.NET Ajax, and then we'll talk about some of the other controls that are available out there as well. But the basic ones, we'll talk about script manager, update panel, update progress, and timer. So what is Ajax? It stands for Asynchronous JavaScript and XML, and it's been around for a while actually. It's a collection of technologies, specifically JavaScript and XML, that are used to update partial parts of a page. So if you're using Google and you're typing in letters, it's going out there and it's dynamically making these JavaScript calls using XML to pull down search suggestions based on what you're typing. But you don't see the whole page flash every time. You only see the drop down change as you type in Google. That's Ajax at work, and it's the auto suggest feature in Google. And then things like pop-ups. If you're in Netflix and you're hovering over a movie and get a quick pop-up, that's using Ajax. So it reaches out there, it uses a JavaScript call to go to the server and say, hey, give me some information, in this case about the Hunger Games, and it just updates that little panel. But you don't see the whole page flash, and that's really what it's all about. It's all about improving the user experience so that they're not seeing a whole. And I'll do a demo in a second here. You'll see what I mean. It makes a huge difference when you update a partial portion of the page versus the whole page. So, a normal HTTP request, basically your web browser, i.e. Explorer, Chrome, Firefox, whatever, you go out there and you make a call to some web server, your application, and then it's got to go run the scripts on the server, might make some round trips to the database server, and eventually it comes back with a response, which is a whole page that comes back to your client. So the whole page comes back and renders the whole page. What an Ajax call does, using the XML HTTP request, is it sends, so it's already got the page, and now it says, hey, I need, I've hit another letter, I typed in, some search in Google, I've typed in an additional letter, just go find, what additional, filter my search results now, or my suggestions, and it'll do the same thing, but it's a much smaller packet, just the data coming back, and we update just that portion that was requested to be updated in the request. So, exactly what are we saying here? How does Ajax update the contents of a page? It basically ties into the events on the web page, and then so you can say, and you can determine which controls have events that trigger an Ajax update. So you'll say, oh, when they click the button, we'll trigger an Ajax update, or if they click select in a grid view, we'll trigger an Ajax update. And what that update will do is prepare that JavaScript request using that XML HTTP request object, or XHR. Sends it to the web server figures out what needs to come back, processes it, and then sends back just that piece. And using JavaScript, the browser will just update the portion of the page that needs the update. And it makes it look like a much cleaner, much more responsive web application. This is the architecture of specifically, now I keep saying Ajax and then I say ASP.NET Ajax. So different people have different implementations. ASP.NET has its implementation of Ajax. And in its implementation, it's got, whatever web browsers, different web browsers support it, not just IE. But the controls, once we enable them to be Ajax enabled, they'll make these calls using that Ajax request to the web server, and then whether it's an Ajax server control or some of the controls in the control toolkit that we're going to talk about, they'll respond with just the Ajax response and update just that portion of the page. So what do we have in ASP.NET Ajax? Well, there's a client-side framework that gets implemented for us. There's the out-of-the-box server controls that are included in Visual Studio. And then there's additional Ajax control toolkit, which is about 40 or so other controls if we really wanted to take advantage of some more Ajax capabilities. So what are the out-of-the-box included with Visual Studio server controls? You've got a script manager proxy, an update panel, an update progress, and a timer. And in a nutshell, you really only need script manager and update panel. And the other ones are a little bit extra. But basically what you do is if you have a regular page, you put a script manager on it. You always have to have at least one. And if you're in like a master, if you have a master page and a content page, you have to choose where you're going to put it. Is it going to live on the master or is it going to live on the client? But you can't have it in both. You'll get an error if you try to put more than one script manager on a page. But then you need an update panel. So you put your script manager, then you say, all right, these controls I want to be Ajax enabled, and you include them in an update panel. An update panel is simply a container. It simply wraps around your controls, and then your controls automatically become Ajax enabled. Now the timer and the update progress and the script manager proxy are additional controls you can do to do some even more things, but really at bare minimum, you really just need the script manager and the update progress to Ajax enable your page. So let me show you that. Let's jump out to our Visual Studio, and I've opened up the book application for chapter 22, this Ajax enabled application, and I've actually modified the code already to de-Ajax enabled. If you open it up from your download, it's already going to be Ajax enabled. But I actually went into my code and I've commented out the update panels. So it's like I don't have update panels on here yet. And without the update panels, this is just a regular page. So let me go ahead and run this. And you'll see, you know, a normal, what we'd expect in a non-Ajax application. You can see I added this thing up at the top that says how many times the page has been reloaded. So if I switch to mask, the page flashes. We're on the second load. Page flash on the third load. Fourth load. If I click view, it goes out there and notice the page, because the whole page has to be updated. Even stuff that doesn't change, right? This graphic never changes, but it's being reloaded every time I click something. So it takes, you can see it takes about a second and a half, which, you know, it's only a second and a half, but it's a lot, especially if I'm trying to, you know, if I'm going through multiple pages here, it's a performance hit. So how can we Ajax enable this to increase our performance and to stop all this, you know, page loading every time? What we can do, we can go to our code and we can say, hey, I want to put an update panel around some of this code. So you can see right here, I've got an update panel that's been commented out, and then end update panel. And I've got this trigger, which is saying, hey, whenever someone chooses something else in the grid, whenever the selected index changes, that's the trigger. That's why I want to make an Ajax call. So let me uncomment this. I'm going to uncomment that selection. By the way, if you haven't used this little hotkey for uncommenting selections, it's pretty cool because it knows that I'm in the markup and it knows how to comment and uncomment out markup. So notice it removed the comments. In markup, it's this angle bracket %, dash dash. If I was in actual code, it would be a different comment. It would be, let me just jump some code. So if I wanted to comment out some code in C#, it understands that that kind of comment is slightly different, right? If I want to comment this code out here, do edit, advanced, comment, it uses a different syntax because we're in C# versus in HTML markup. So I uncommented out my update panel. Let me do the other half. I've actually got two update panels on here. So let me uncomment out, that's the top and the bottom half of the second one. Scroll up here, let me uncomment out the top and the bottom half of the first one. You can have multiple update panels, so I've got, they can, or I could just have everything in one big one. It's just if I want to, control the different triggers for each update panel. So up here, what's my trigger here? Looks like I've got when the drop-down list changes. That's the first update panel, and then my second update panel, which is right here, triggers when the grid changes. So now that I've got my controls in two different update panels, look at the design. So notice here I've got this grouping in here in this one update panel, the views update panel, and then where's my other update panel? Products panel, there it is. That's the top half. So let's run this guy. And now watch what happens. It says it's been loaded one time. As we switch to masks and props, look how much faster it is. It's not loading the whole page. The page doesn't even think it's been reloaded. Look, it's saying no, I haven't reloaded the page. I'm just doing portions of the page. If I come down here and select things, look at this. It loads, but the whole page doesn't flash. it still takes a good second and a half to go get that data because it's still making a call to the database. It's got to do all that. But it doesn't feel like it takes as long because it doesn't flash. Look, the page, this hasn't changed at all. So, just by including some controls within an update panel, I've Ajax enabled my application and made it much faster, or seemingly much faster. All right. So the other thing I pointed out the update panels and the triggers. The other thing that makes all this happen is this script manager, right? I've got to have a script manager there. If I don't have that there, where do these all live? They live over here under Ajax extensions. That's out of the box in Visual Studio. So I drug a script manager over, and that has to exist somewhere on my page. And I also, I had 2 update panels that I had pulled over to my page, and I started and ended them around my controls. Now that I've got 2 script managers, it's going to holler at me, right? What I say before, that you're not allowed to have more than 1 script manager. So trying to run it with 2, it says, hey, you can only have 1. Surprised it just doesn't let me, when I drag and drop it, it should just holler at me and say, you can't have that. But all right. What about other Ajax controls? So there is this, Microsoft has this Ajax control toolkit, and they put it out there on Codeplex, and it's open source now, so other people can contribute to it. Microsoft is in this big frenzy of open source now. They're making a lot of their code that was previously proprietary open source, so other people can help them debug it and add to it and stuff. So the Ajax control kit, now it's open source. You have to download it to add it to your solution. It includes a color picker, a collapsible panel, an accordion, watermark controls, all sorts of cool controls. They're all free, and you use the managed NuGet packages to download that additional control. Let me actually show you how you do that. So if I go back over to Visual Studio, if I wanted to add the Ajax control kit to my solution here, actually I've already done it, but I'll do it again. You click on Tools and NuGet Manager, and I'm going to manage my NuGet packages for the solution. And it's going to go out there and look at all the stuff that's available. I'm going to switch it to just what's installed. So you can see I've already got my Ajax toolkit downloaded. If I didn't have it downloaded, I'd go to online and I'd search for it. I'd find it. So it's already there. It's already been downloaded. And then I would say, install. And it took about 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes. There's a few licenses that it's being open source code. I have to agree not to, turn around and resell it for profit. So there's a few clicks to download it, install it, and all that. The tough part is once it's just click and then it's installed. But once it's installed, it's still not in my toolbox. So what I have to do is you actually have to come over here and you have to say, I want to include it in my toolbox. So I have to come over here and create a, let me reset my toolbox. So yeah, go ahead and reset it. So now it's back the way it is before I download it. So you download the kit, then you have to come over here and say, hey, I want to add a tab, call it something like, my Ajax controls, call whatever you like. But this is just going to group the controls that I downloaded. Then in order to get them to show up in my toolbox, I right click here and I say, hey, I want to add some new items and I want to grab the assembly or the dynamic link library, the DLL that I downloaded. So I'm going to go browse out for it because it's not in that list. And I know it's in I downloaded it to my solution, right? Let me go up a level. So what solution am I in? This one, I think. Under packages, there's the control toolkit that I downloaded to my solution. So I go into there. The DLL or assembly is going to be under lib, and I want version .NET 4.5, and I want the English version, which is this guy. So I'll go ahead and select that guy, and that's going to pull all those controls in under the tab that I created under my toolbox. So it's a little bit of, it's not very intuitive. They don't really tell you, hey, once you download it, I don't know why it doesn't just add a tab to your, we'll say okay to that. It's like 40 different controls that are now selected. So I'll say okay, and there we go. They all show up there under my toolbox. I don't know why it doesn't do that for you after the download, but it doesn't. But now you can see you've got, autocomplete extender, there's drop down extender, all the pie chart, all these cool controls that you can add to your ASP.NET applications, and they're all Ajax enabled. And then the book goes and lists a few of those guys. and talks about how to get it. There is a whole website with more resources on how to download it and set it up and all that good stuff. Some other notes about the script manager control. There's common attributes. There's how often do we want to asynchronously post back, after a certain amount of time, what's the timeout. If we want to enable page methods, script localization, that has to do with languages, whether or not we have is in async post back or not, that's true or false. Whether we want to load scripts before we do the user interface. So here's some examples of a script manager in the code behind, and then you can use the script manager to say, hey, I want to load some JavaScript. Maybe I've got some jQuery library that I want to include in my application. I can use script manager to load that. So here, and you can also use it to register web services, and we'll talk about web services next lecture, next chapter. But basically, if I'm going to be utilizing web services in my application, Script Manager is a way to reference them so that I'm able to use them. And then some examples of Script Manager with the proxy control. Again, this is another way of saying, hey, I've got some JavaScript that I want to include, so I'll use the proxy to include that. Or a web service. Some other attributes. An example of setting up the update panel. This is a blank update panel. It doesn't make much sense. Typically, in an update panel, you're going to have inside your content template that's what's surrounding the controls that you wanted Ajax enabled. So in this case, we've got a button that we're enabling, and then we're setting the trigger to the click event of the button using the triggers element. There's a timer control out of the box under Ajax extensions, and that's to say, hey, what if instead of responding, to a user clicking, I could just say every 10 seconds update those portions of the page. So I don't have to wait for a user to click. I can just, do it on a timer. You set the interval, you set whether it's enabled. So this is 10 seconds. And then finally, there's an update progress control that shows if a portion of a page is being updated, you can give them a little progress bar to let them know that it's being updated. I think we saw that in the demo I just did. So, updating, please wait kind of thing. That's what this guy is down here. Some of the code behind, nothing that we haven't seen already. Some of the triggers that we talked about, and just showing us how we set up the triggers with the update panels around the controls that we have on the page. They don't have a specific exercise in the downloads, but you can look at the book exercise and attempt to. The first suggestion they have is just looking at the book exercise from chapter 22, and then the second thing they suggest is maybe going out there to the order page of the Halloween Superstore from chapter 18 and surrounding those controls with update panels so that they're Ajax enabled. It's something to try. If you have any questions, shoot me an email or hit me up in the Q&A panel in the live meeting. Thanks.